Welcome to Side Alpha Leadership, a podcast where leaders can share their experiences and discuss what leadership means to them. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Hello and welcome to this month's Side Alpha Leadership. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the art of decision making, the reluctancy of making decisions, and how we can overcome that. My guest in the studio today is Shane Darwick. I've known Shane for quite a while. We work together in Montgomery County, and we currently work together. So without me going on like I normally do, Shane, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Dave, for having me on.
So before we get into it, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, maybe a brief bio, so we kind of understand where you're coming from and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, sure. So my service started back in Prince George's County. I was a volunteer and started back in 1974. So I got almost 50 years on the job. So I was 16 years old at the time, and the career staff kind of took me under their wing as Company 45 in Croom in Upper Marlboro. Mm-hmm. And pretty active company, and covered a lot of area. We had a ladder truck that went all the way to Boulevard Heights district line, because all I had was between us and the district line was Clinton,
right?
Company 25.
Right.
So quite a large area to cover with the ladder truck, but engine company and rural operations. It was very active company at the time.
It's one of those companies that did everything from rural all the way down to basically urban.
Yes.
Yeah. And
I ended up moving into the station when I was 18 and lived there for about 2 years. Decided I wanted to be a career firefighter. In the meantime, I got a job with Washington, D.C. on the ambulance. So they had a recruit school about 8 weeks long, gave you, a little SCBA training and EMT and stuff like that. So right from there, went right to the 8-engine, A-9,
mm-hmm.
worked there in the southeast region of the city. At the time, it was like 3 shifts. You could run 20 calls on an 8-hour shift.
Right.
It was close turnaround time between hospitals and things like that. Actually, made me a very good EMT. I got transferred down to Ambulance 3, which is the lower part of Anacostia.
Right.
Worked there for a couple of months and said, hey, look, I'll be on the detail trail. I'll still continue trying to get a career job as a firefighter. But became on the detail trail throughout the city. I ran every ambulance in the city. But there was 8 ambulances and 1 medic in it for the city. So it was very active.
Quite busy. So yeah. You wouldn't be at odds to find yourself leaving your particular station and end up, from southeast to northeast to maybe northwest.
Easily.
Depending on where you are. Now, Ambulance 3, what station, what engine company they running?
That was it was actually at 31.
Okay. So 31 engine down in southeast.
Yeah, 31 engine. And we had Ambulance 3.
Yep.
And the Ambulance 9 we ran out of 8 engine. And that became Mobile 9, the second medic unit.
Those companies are still busy to this day.
Oh, yeah. So I got a good experience there. Then I was picked up by Montgomery County,
mm-hmm.
Bethesda Fire Department. Bethesda Fire Department was a corporation within Montgomery County at the time. 4-man engine, 4-man truck, no EMS, no ambulance. I was the only EMT on the shift when I got hired.
Right.
First day on the job, they gave me 3/4 boots and a canvas coat and a helmet. Said, get on the back step, you'll be riding layout for a while until we get you in a rookie school.
Right.
They waited until they got enough people in the county to start a rookie school.
Right. So
Glen Echo, Silver Spring, they put a group together and we'd all go. So I went through recruit school there in Montgomery County, and the county ran the school at the time. And came back out, went back to Bethesda, and I rode the back step for 8 years out of Company 26.
Right.
Now, when I was there, I had great officers, riding the back step, and we could ride the ladder truck. We'd do rotations, but the rookie always had, you raised the flags, made the coffee, cleaned the kitchen, all the rookie duties that you see at any other fire company, right?
Right.
So I had a lot of senior guys on the shift. They didn't want to ride the small line position, which is on the back step, and because of all the house duties and things you had to do. So after I made firefighter off probation, I said, I'll continue to do this. I love riding the line on an inch company. I loved it. So, and I loved riding the back step. So I did that for 8 years in this road small line.
Right. And people need to understand when Shane's saying he rode the back step, he literally rode on the back of the fire engine like we used to do back in the day. And for people that don't understand what small lines mean, that means he's riding the nozzle on that engine company. And to have people saying, I've got some time, man, I don't really want to do that. And, just like, hey,
right.
I'll do that.
Yes. And I loved it. So, it came up to the position where the point in my career where after 8 years of riding the back step that maybe it's time I wanted to be an officer. So I had a good officer, Captain Moultrie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know. He was he came to our station. He was my captain, and he said, "Look, you want to be an officer?" And I said, "Yes, I would like to." But he goes, "Look, I'll make you a deal." And this is the best thing the officers ever said to me, that you don't have to do your housework. You don't have to participate in drills. I'll do your housework, and you'll be excused as long as you study. I'll give you this time to study. But if I see you watching television, this is part of the deal. The deal's off.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Okay, Cap." So I did. But I said, I still want to participate in the drills. I love the drill. And I know I'll still do my housework. I don't want anybody to do my housework.
Right.
So he allowed me that time. I didn't do it. I scored like number 1 in the county as a sergeant in Bethesda. At the time, they had an outstanding list, a well-qualified, and a qualified. They since changed it to well-qualified and qualified.
Right.
So they had to hire the outstandings first before they moved on to the qualified.
To the next list.
So it put me right up front, and they knew, hey, wait a minute, this guy has been riding a back step. We haven't groomed him to be an officer. They immediately, when they saw my score, where I was on the list, took me down to downtown Bethesda to Station 6, and we're going to groom you, put you in charge of the truck downtown, Bethesda, which you worked.
Yeah, I worked
for
there
many years.
for 6 years at Station 6.
Yeah.
So, very busy, very urban, high-rise district,
Not a high-rise.
Lots of calls.
Yeah. And so I enjoyed that. And then from there, my career, I made sergeant right away, stayed at 6. And what was challenging about that was they promoted me in the same station that I worked.
Right.
And the first day, understanding, I sit at the kitchen table, we have a lineup, talked about what are going to be the drills today, the drill of the day.
Right.
So as I asked those guys, I looked around the table, and what are we going to drill on today? Every one of you senior firefighters have taught me to be who I am. You taught me how to lay out, man. You taught me how to pull a line. How can I go and now I am your leader.
Right.
I'm in a weird position, I feel. And they looked at me and said, "No, you're our sergeant now. You're our officer, and we'll do whatever you want." And that was really cool. They accepted me, and that was really humbling.
Right. But it also had to make the transition a little easy, where you didn't have to feel, in a sense, you probably felt you were proving yourself that you were worthy of that particular position, but they had your back.
Yeah.
And that's pretty good. And it's almost rare to see that nowadays with the whole I got mine mentality. So, so there's something to be said about those old school firemen and how they were.
Yeah. And as I was the youngest one on the shift, and they were accepted me, and they always treated me as an equal.
Right.
But in today's fire service, we don't do that to an officer. We'll promote you and move you to a new assignment.
Right.
We don't do that to people.
Don't keep you in the same station.
Yeah. It was awkward.
Right.
But yet very humbling. And like you said, I had good people.
Sure.
So from there, ended up Montgomery County kind of took over. We had overtime grievances and things like that with the county. And they settled that, and the county took over.
Yeah, it was 1988.
Yeah. So I worked with the county, went down to the 1st Battalion, went to 16 for a while, very active company. Worked there for a few years, and I felt I wanted to get promoted again and worked through I had Billy Alon, if you know him, was a deputy chief.
Yep.
I mean, he was a battalion chief at the time.
Right.
And he came to me and said, "Hey, look, we got an opportunity at the training academy. If you want to be promoted, maybe it's a good opportunity for you to do that." So I went to the training division. That's probably one of the better things I did in my career.
Right.
I didn't like leaving my active company. I loved it there down in the 1st Battalion. And but when I walked in there, Chief Clemens, as you know,
Right.
I walked in and said, "Hey, Chief, I'd like to see what this job's all about." He's like, "Tag, you're it." I'm like, "Wait a minute, Tag." He goes, "No, you're the one. In 2 weeks, you'll be here." I said, "I just came to see what the job was all about today." And he goes, "No, you're it." And I was there in 2 weeks, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm back. I'm on day work. I'm working at the training academy. I got a recruit class of at least 55 people coming in, which was large,
very large
for the classes.
Right.
And you were involved back then
Yep.
as well, and you came as an instructor.
Yep.
And very challenging. And 9/11 occurred through that period of time, and we went through a lot of things. I worked my way up through the ranks there, and I made battalion chief. Went to the 5th Battalion and stayed there for to the end of my career.
Right.
I retired from Montgomery with like 36 years on the job, and it was the greatest thing. We had the drop program where you pick that. You don't know when that 3 years is going to come,
Right.
And what you're going to do. So you're projecting 3 years in your life, like today.
Right.
It's kind of where are you going to be?
Right.
And I thought, as I got into the drop, it was a financial reasons, I guess. We looked at, hey, it's time. I made the max. You look at your retirement benefits like that, and you go to a financial advisor and they advise you what to do. And you're like, all right, guess it's time, But in my heart, I was like, wait, I'm not done,
Right. Nope. I'm with you on that.
yeah, exactly. And so as time got closer, that first year, you think 3 years, that's a long time. And that first year was slow. Second year went pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And that last year flew by.
Right.
And I think anyone that's in the drop finds that pretty consistent.
Right.
And once I got to the drop, in that third year, I started looking for jobs. And it's tougher than you think. You're not going to start out as a battalion chief.
Sure.
You may get a shot like you did.
Right. You get lucky.
Yeah. But I did get lucky, and I did get a job at Carroll County.
Mm-hmm.
Carroll County had a training manager position open that ran a training position through an association through Carroll County. Carroll County was all volunteer, 14 companies, really slowed down. Great retirement job.
Right.
And it all involved about training. And at the same time, they were developing a new training academy,
Mm-hmm.
buildings,
Right.
A classroom building and an auditorium, and building out the fireground there, that the grounds for training.
Right.
So I was intimately involved in that as a program manager. I got my fingerprint on a lot of that stuff there and made some really good changes for Carroll County, I believe.
Yeah, I can firsthand attest that you did. You oversaw the construction of the new academy, and it's a nice academy. It's bigger than what we've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
We went from like this rural area to an actual really good metropolitan training academy with good instructors, good infrastructure.
Yeah. So when I got there, it was a barn, and it had a classroom
Mm-hmm.
and a civil defense shelter.
Yep.
That was like underground, and they built on top of that. But we still incorporated the barn for Carroll County.
Still
and
there.
It's a great training.
It is.
It's got a lot of good props and things inside the barn, and that's really the icon of Carroll County.
Mm-hmm.
That training division there. So.
Yep.
Then I had the opportunity to come to Frederick County as an assistant chief, the position you're in now, to assist the director of volunteer services. But it was mainly an operational position where you helped out and get out to the volunteers and help them out, which
Right.
You do today, and managing the safety components, the operational part of it, and training as well.
Right.
So that was really up my alley. I I like that a lot.
Right.
Good position. My predecessor, Chief Fox, was a battalion chief here. He got the position as director. He worked for a couple of years, and then he retired. Once he retired, I was wanting to stay in the position I was in because I liked it. But then you get to that point, who are you going to work for?
Right.
Should I throw my name in the hat?
I think you and I actually had those conversations. We talked on the phone even long before I was here.
Right.
Right.
And so I decided that I throw my name in the hat, and I did end up with the position.
Right.
So now I'm the deputy chief in operations, but I'm the director of volunteer fire rescue services.
It's a funny position because people ask me, well, what does that job entail? And I was like, I'd actually have to pull the job description out to show you all the things that respond. There's so many things to make sure that the volunteers get what they need. Yeah. So it is a unique position.
It is. There was some other things within my career that I had an opportunity. I think as firefighters, if I could find your passion and stick with that kind of thing. Say for training was my passion, and I learned a lot of things. One of the positions I was transferred from, I think I was at Sandy Spring Company 40, which was a good company, and I made captain. They put me at Company 9 at the upper end of the county, very slow company, very edge of the county, and I was like, oh my God, this is the end. I really didn't want that position. I wanted the promotion, but they said
you wanted to be busy.
If you wanted the promotion, this is a spot, right? So I get there. I said, you know what? I'm going to make the best of where I'm at. So one chief told me, bloom where you're planted, right? So that was Chief Clements. Mm-hmm. So I thought about that, and I thought, I'm going to learn everything I can about rural water supply. Mm-hmm. And there's a creek there, tanker, engine, and every day I go out and learn what I could about it. As I learned more, I started making drills, company drills, battalion drills. And as I made battalion chief, did more battalion drills. And I got picked up with Mark Davis and got Big Water company that he works with. Right. And we traveled around the country teaching rural water supply. But he got my name from attending some of my drills. And I said, hey, this is something we want to can do. Right. So we spent a lot of time in New England area, New Hampshire, Alabama, the very rural areas, and teaching rural water supply. And man, I learned a lot. As I was working with them, and I got involved with the command competency stuff in Montgomery County. Right. And we were in the beginnings of that. So I was helpful, and then you went through that with us. Right. Well, that's where you got a lot of your command. I did knowledge. And
it's funny because when I first had to do my command competencies, I think I was still a captain. I was on the list for battalion chief, and I failed the very first time I went through because I didn't understand the concept. And I was very hard on myself. I was very mad. I was angry with myself, disappointed. I felt like I didn't live up to what the position I wanted to be. And I went back for the retest, and you were sitting next to me. And the first thing you said is, "You're going to get through this." and I did. Once I realized that, hey, you don't have to rush through this. This is your test. Right. You control the pace. And once I learned that, it was kind of funny. And I never forget that because you're going to pass. You're going to get through this.
Yeah. So that's a good point, because when you're not going to fail. What we want everyone to know is the job. So right. We call it the No Chief Left Behind program. We didn't want no one to fail. You used the word you failed. Right. You didn't fail. We would ask you to come back.
Come back for some training.
Yeah. So we would ask you to come back. But with that, we wanted you to have the confidence to do and move forward and grab the concepts where we were all on the same page. Right. So it was a good way to look at things instead of trying to fail people. Today, you see a lot of people, they want black and white, 70%. And I think in our job, 70% is not good enough. Right. 70% of the hose lines charged on the fireground is not acceptable. Right. So I want you to know everything about that. I'll give you the answers, dude. I want you to know it all before you leave today, not 70%. Right. So with that mentality, I think we got much further with our education and advanced. Montgomery is very good today. Right. And I think that foundation started that. So.
I agree. And the thing that I learned as I started working with Command Comp and being able to do that kind of stuff was, we want you to pass, and we're going to give you the tools to pass. And if you don't make it the first time, you'll come in for some remedial and we'll train you. But when you leave, we are comfortable and confident that when you run that call, you've got all the tools you need to run that call. And I think that's what set Montgomery up as the standard of this command comp stuff. I'm not trying to, toot the horn, but the career and volunteers working together to the point where you very rarely have to say stuff in the command vehicle. You give them your chart, they know exactly what they need to do, and we're doing the same thing. Yeah. Whether we're charting or talking on the radio, we're talking the same language.
Yeah, and that was the goal for that,
and
it paid off.
It did.
And I don't know if you realized it, but as soon as you left there, you'd probably run that same incident 2 weeks later,
probably,
and use everything that you learned. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is.
But that command comp builds that repetition. I mean, we're only doing it once a year. It should be more. We recognize that. But, one of the things that I always say is, we tell our firefighters and our captains and our lieutenants, you need to get out there and pull tack lines and throw ladders and search and rescue and forcible entry because you need to be proficient at that. And at the end of the day, the expectation is as command officers, we need to be proficient at what we do. What are we doing for training?
Right.
And the command comp gives us those reps so we don't have to rely on the job training. And we're building that now in Frederick as well. So moving forward a little bit. So you moved into the position of Deputy Chief Director of Volunteer Services. I was fortunate enough to apply for the position and got hired. So we're working together, and it's a really cool position. It's unique. It's different skill set. But what I want to talk about is through your career, and I kind of had a similar footprint because I got hired by the corporation as well. We talk about decision making decisions, and on the fireground, we're tasked with making quick decisions with very incomplete information, and then we have to adjust on the fly as more information comes in. What I found, and I've talked about it on this show quite a bit, is that there's a reluctancy for officers to make decisions, firefighters in general. And I've always asked why, and then I always get the answer, well, they're afraid, they're going to get in trouble, and I challenge that. But I want to throw that to you because you've gone through your career from backstep to front seat and having to learn to make those decisions. We had good mentors as we went through, but a lot of stuff we had to figure out on our own. So where are we with this reluctancy to make decisions, and then how do we overcome that?
So I think you start back with decision making the day you start riding the ambulance. You put a lot of rookies or the young guy riding that, the left seat or right seat of the ambulance,
right.
And you do a lot of decision making there. You don't really realize it at that time. From the beginning of your career all the way through, you're put in the position of making decisions. If you look at a lot of the textbooks that we read today, they're all about decision making. Even the strategy and tactics, it's all decision making. Mm-hmm. And we don't realize that as we go through, but it is. Size up is decision. Based on decision making. The reluctancy becomes we're our own worst enemy. We don't want to make a mistake. We want to do the right thing. We want to follow the SOPs. Sometimes departments are so SOP driven that you're afraid to deviate from that. But right. Most of our SOPs are more guidelines, mm-hmm. and you are allowed to make those decisions. Having the ability or knowing that your officers will back you up, that you are the officer for a reason to make those decisions, that's your job. And we talked the other day about some, how we make decisions and things like that. And I went through a scenario
Sure.
with you. I could share that now.
Yeah, absolutely. Share, because I found it quite interesting. Yeah. The question you ask kind of put you on the spot right away. And well, what'd I do? Yeah. And say, come on, you got to make the decision. So what's it going to be?
So I asked, and I use this in classroom settings with officers. And so it goes, we're talking about decision making. And if you look at a scenario where you have a firefighter and a baby, a child in the same occupancy that's on fire, say the second floor, and you have to make the decision that you can only save one, everything being equal in the scenario. Only one will survive. Who will you choose? The child? And if you choose the child, you could be a hero or whatever. And if you choose a firefighter, someone will say, hey, well, you just saved your buddy. It might be in the newspaper or whatever. But, they were sworn to protect the property. We take risk.
Right.
Firefighters take risk.
Mhm.
But if I go around the classroom and ask them, hey, number one student, who would you choose? Oh, the child. The number two student, I do the firefighter. Or maybe, kind of like maybe the firefighter could get out. No,
Right.
everything, he will die.
Right.
The child will die. You only have that choice to make. So you have to make that choice. So as you go around, you might hear some people, I don't know. Hey, look, Lieutenant, make a decision. Can't sit on the fence. One of them's going to die right now. You got to make a decision. The firefighter, and then you go around the classroom and you'll get different answers. There's no right or wrong answer, right? But know that you will be criticized in the papers if you choose one or the other. You made the right or wrong decision. So if I went further with it and I said, okay, it's between the President of the United States and your mother, does that make a difference? So I go around the room.
That depends.
Oh, that's easy.
Exactly.
Depends on who you vote for or your mom, how she treated you or whatever. So, all right. So maybe the President of the United States and the baby, would that change anything? Because the president, the young life, how old's the president?
Right.
Something like that. Or the firefighter and the president. Does that make it easier to make your decision?
Right.
So the backstory on that is there was a National Geographic photographer. This happened years ago. That got a Pulitzer Prize winning award for taking a photograph of a Ethiopian child being devoured by a vulture.
Right.
And he's taking this picture. So someone at the award ceremony raises their hand and says, hey, why don't you just put down the camera and save the child?
Right.
About a year later, this guy commits suicide, and they found that he could not live with the decision that he had made. So the moral of the story is, whatever you choose, is you got to live with the decision that you make.
Right.
So if I choose the firefighter, hey, can I sit across the coffee table with the guys at the station and say I let Dave die? Or I made that decision and I saved that the firefighter. You can be criticized by the public. Hey, you saved your buddy or whatever.
Right.
But is that a decision I can live with? And I'd probably say yes, I could live with that decision. You let the kid die. That'd be hard.
Right.
But no, I live with the decision. I have to live with the decision I made, right? So throughout your decision-making process, you have to make the decision that you can live with.
Right.
So in a hazardous materials incident, one population may die because of a gas plume going in that direction or something like that. Could you save part of that population or another? But you have to make the decision that you can live with. So I teach that to my kids and stuff like that. Make the decision you can live with through life, and you can live with yourself.
I think and what that comes down to is that you have to make that decision quickly.
Yeah.
And it's there. Yes and no. You can teach that decision-making process, but a lot of it does come from on the job. Yeah. A lot of it does come from your mentors and watching them.
Right.
And one of the things that I talk about is it depends on who you had as your officer, who you had to look up to. Were they good? Were they a good officer, or were they kind of a turd? And that's all you had to look up to. And now how is that affecting your decision as you move forward? And that's why I tell people you need to seek out additional training. You need to spread your wings a little bit. You just can't, stay in your house and that's where you get that information from. But, being able to make decisions, people need to understand that when you go from firefighter to officer, there is a large amount of responsibility that gets put on your shoulders. Now, one thing that you said about, being on the ambulance and you're making decisions all day long and you don't even realize it. And if we think back to, when you become new in the fire service, you're going to probably ride aid on the ambulance, that right side of that ambulance for a while. And the person driving you is probably the one that just got off probation. So now you basically have, between the two of you, a year and a half worth of on the job training or a year and a half of being in the career a volunteer, and you too are there to make decisions. We taught you in EMT class how to deal with emergencies, how to make decisions. EMT is 220 hours long. In firefighting class, we teach you to follow the directions of the instructor or the officer, and we're going to tell you what to do, as opposed to, I'm going to give you a set of parameters and you need to figure this out. I think we're moving towards that in training now, where we're giving a little bit more pressure on the shoulders of the recruits to, you need to do some problem solving and then make some decisions. But that old training was, I'll tell you what to do, rookie, and you go do it.
Right.
Now we're saying we're going to put you in the situation, and then we're going to evaluate how you did, and then maybe talk about some better decisions as you move to the future. You can put that in the back of your mind. I think that's the direction our training really needs to go. In order to make good officers, good, smart firefighters, we need to allow them to make decisions. With that comes making mistakes. So let's talk a little bit about, mistakes. And as a supervisor, how did you deal with firefighters or even your lieutenants or captains and your battalion chief that made decisions but weren't the best? How did you deal with that so they wouldn't be gun shy in the future to make decisions?
I think any kind of a mistake is a training opportunity. Every one of those is a training opportunity. And if you approach it as a training opportunity and work through those, and how we're going to do better next time.
Right.
And we're firefighters are our worst critics. So we'll go through that. But like you said, that's a recognition, prime learning kind of thing that you learned. I've seen those slides before in command competencies, and we go through those exercises. I've seen that slide before.
Right.
I've done this before. So those things help with decision making as well. But as you come up through and you make a mistake, we sit down and talk through we're going to learn from this one, and that's the only way we can do it. Because as firefighters, we'll fight that last fire until we go to the next one. Right. So it's always that way.
Yep.
So, and if you think back to every one of your fire, you'll be a critic until you go to that next fire, and you'll get on that next one. And we learn from those, and those are how we make decisions as we go through.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to say I was always my own worst critic when I ran a call. Sure. I could have done this better, could have done that better. I think that's human, but it's also indicative of how we think as firefighters, is that we always want to do the best job possible. And could we have done it better? We tend to overanalyze things, and that's good and bad as long as we're not losing sleep over it. Like you said, the learning opportunity where you have your hot wash and you go around and you talk to everybody. What did you do? Why did you do that? So maybe they can articulate their decision-making process, and that might benefit the guy that's got 1 year on as a lieutenant when they move forward and why they did things. When it comes to, if you made a mistake and then how we learn from that, how we move forward, so we can bring that up in our minds right away when we face that situation again. The next call that we run, we should be able to say, well, this didn't work, and this was something. This is how I would do it. We're constantly playing those scenarios in our heads to be able to make better decisions as we move forward.
I think you hit on something with the hot washes. And what I learned was a battalion chief. We were told every fire we do a hot wash, and that was enforced. So as I was a new battalion chief, we'd have the hot wash with the officers would get around. And I would just ask them, hey, what did we learn from this incident? What could we do better, kind of thing. And I wouldn't hit anybody on anything, trying to criticize anything. But we saw something, we'd bring it up. But what I saw in the beginning was we would talk about water supply, pulling the right attack line, ladder placement, things like that. So as we had drills and talked through as time went on, I saw that, in the end, when close to my last days as battalion chief, last few fires I ran, I realized, we're not talking about tactics or, pulling lines and water supply anymore and throwing ladders. We're talking about strategic plans. The next time we ran this call, we would take another approach and stuff like that. The basics were being covered. We weren't beating ourselves up on that anymore. while we have you here today, let's talk about ladder placement. Next fire we ran, we're dead on. Hey, Chief, how do you like our ladder placement? Like, cool.
Moving on to the next level.
Right. So, I saw that really evolve in our decision making as a battalion, as a team. So it was really rewarding to see that. So.
One of the things that I did as a battalion chief when I went around and was asking these questions about decision making, and I started to say, what if I tried to empower my shifts, as a battalion chief? I'd go to the captain and say, hey, look, I want you to have your firefighters deliver a drill.
Yeah.
So I want them to come up with a topic, whether it be a PowerPoint or we go out and do something practical, but I want them to put it together and then teach it. And when they teach it, that gives them the mentality to make decisions on how they're going to approach this particular drill, how they're going to deliver it, the information that they want to get out there. And then when they bring it together as a shift and that person is given that drill, that young firefighter is given that drill, I think that boosts their confidence up a little bit, that they give this drill, they understand the decisions that they made in order to give a good drill, and then they keep that in the back of their head. And then they're going to pull in some information, some constructive criticism. Hey, think about this next time, or hey, think about that, or hey, I understand what you're doing here. What if we did this and this and this? And then you build on that. And I think that boosts everybody's confidence up to allow the drills should not just come from the captains and lieutenants. We need to reach down and allow the younger members to take the lead sometimes. And I think what that does is not only does it boost their confidence, but it also makes them feel that I can do this and I didn't get criticized for doing it. So when I go to make decisions as I move forward in my career, I've got that confidence already.
Right.
So we want to make everything a teachable moment. You hit on that. And I think we live by that because we've come through the training industry, and we've talked about how we want to approach training, how we want to have people empower them to give training. We've come from a position that, you made a mistake, let's learn from it and let's move forward, as opposed to hitting them with a hammer. And I think that it's imperative that everybody takes that instructor role every now and then to make sure that they can actually feel comfortable giving a drill to their peers. So I want to talk a little bit about, as you moved forward, what did you find challenging with your people and having them able to move forward and put them in a strong position when they decided that they wanted to get promoted, and that when they left you as you being their officer to them being officers, you felt comfortable enough that they were going to make sound decisions and do the right thing on the fireground?
I think it's just a combination of everything you just really discussed. I mean, it's giving them the confidence that they need to move forward. With something like that, it's just that each of the calls we run, every day in, day out, and taking those opportunities to make those decisions, put in different scenarios, what ifs, and discussing them. Bringing them back to the firehouse and bringing them to the coffee table and listening to others.
Right.
As we learn, we do that normally.
Right.
But it all helps in the end, that decision making. I took a class at the National Fire Academy. It's a 2-week course on multiple alarm fires.
Right. I took that class. Yeah. Yep.
So the day I came back, was my next shift, I ran a triple fatal fire. And we were at the National Fire Academy. We were running like a 9-alarm fire, I believe, and before we left there.
Right.
And when I ran that fire that night, I put it all together, all the things that I'd learned up to that point. And what I learned at the National Fire Academy, it was just like, hey, at the end of the day, there was, a lot of the command officers came up to me the next day and said, you know what, you had your hands around that incident. It was time for you to step up to the plate, and you did. You did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard that from like officers like Chief Gallo
Mm-hmm.
and Chief Tippett, that meant so much to me to know that, and that gave you more confidence
Right.
in doing it. But taking the classes, learning what you can, all that slideshow of command competencies, the training that you have, all comes together, and making that decision that you can live with in the end helps you come up with the right decision. When you take your assessment center, they look at decision making is one of the things
Right.
they look at, right?
Right.
So if you sit on the fence, you're not going to get a good score, right? If you don't make a decision, you're not going to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
The person that, hey, this is the decision that I'm making today. If I'm the chief, this is my decision. You're going to score much higher,
Right.
you know. And in life, you make that decision, the one you can live with, and you're going to move forward.
Right.
Be successful.
Yeah, I think people need to understand that, you know, when we've talked about promotional process, and like decision making is one of the dimensions that they grade you on. And I tell people, I said, you need to make a decision. It might not be the best, but you need to be decisive. You need to say, this is what I'm going to do. And then you move from there. And like we talked about at the beginning of the show, as incident commanders, as unit officers, we are tasked to make fast decisions in a chaotic atmosphere with very little information.
Yeah.
And then we need to have that ability to adjust that decision, our strategy, as we bring in more information. And that's what I tell people. I said, you need to understand that when I call you on the radio and I'm asking you for information, it's because I want to make sure that the direction that I'm going is working. And if it's not, then I need to adjust on the fly. And I think that having that push-pull communication type thing is allowing us to make quicker decisions, feel more confident in the decisions that we make, and then being able to, you know, adjust, having that experience to be able to adjust. And one of the things you said, you know, having your peers come back and, you know, people that you look up to, that you respect, saying that, hey, you know, you did a really good job on that, or hey, it really sounded like things were going crappy, but you sounded great on the radio, had good command presence. We've talked about before. That you never sounded like you were excited, although I know what was going on was pretty chaotic. And that means a lot, you know, when you hear from your peer. You know, I tell people I'd rather have a slap on the back saying, man, you're a hell of a firefighter. You were a hell of an incident commander, than to get a ribbon or a certificate or whatever any day of the week. You know, the accolades from your peers mean way more to the average firefighter than just getting a ribbon or anything like that. So some of the things that I've learned along the way I've had the luck, I would say, of having really good mentors or people to learn from that allowed me to move forward in my career and understand that if I do make a mistake, it's not the end of the world as long as nobody got hurt or anything like that, but I could learn from it. But like we talked about earlier, you're always going to be your own worst critic.
Right.
But you know, you talked about the National Fire Academy, and I've told people 1,000 times, hey, spread your wings out, go out and take some classes that aren't in your county. And it's funny, you mentioned the managing multiple alarms class. That was a week-long class. It was a residency class. And I took that when I was a captain. I was told by my captain at the time, Mike Close, said, go take that particular class. I never wanted to be a chief officer. But when I took that class and I saw how some of these chiefs from around the country were struggling for these alarms, and you know, you started off right away. You rolled up on the scene as the incident commander to an incident that was already being played out, and you were already at the third or fourth alarm when you got there. The incident commanders, or the chief that was walking in, the role play that he was doing, struggled. And, you know, was really lost when it came to, okay, you're now taking over. What are you going to do? And they didn't know. And, you know, I walked in as an aide to help them. I had more training as a captain than a lot of these deputy chiefs and assistant chiefs from around the country had as a chief. And, you know, I tell the story 1,000 times, go home and I tell my wife, you know, I was like, wow, you know, these are the incident commanders that are around America, we're still killing over 100 firefighters a year, and we're struggling to command these incidents. And I kept, harping on that because I didn't understand, because we get good training in this Mid-Atlantic area. And she finally gave me the shit or get off the pot moment. She was either take the test and become a chief and try to make a difference, or shut up.
Yeah.
And I did. I took the test, and I wasn't sure how it was going to be, and it was a learning curve. But I've always done my best to try to make it better, to be calm on the radio. And we worked with a lot of really good incident commanders that I never heard them yell on the radio. You being one of them, you were always like, almost like, hey, what's going on, man? Hey, I need you to get a line to the second floor, And I think that command presence pays on the fireground. So as we're coming up towards the end of this, I want to talk a little bit about that command presence and what you bring to the fireground that puts people a little bit at ease, to understand that I know if I make a mistake, I'm not going to get hammered for it. And then how that plays into, hopefully, it ignites something under these people that I can still make decisions, and if I make a mistake, I'll learn from them. So how did you learn that command presence, that calm, being on the radio and being the voice of calm during the chaos, not to be cliche?
I'm not sure how you would learn something like that, but if the benefits of you are there to be in charge. When in charge, be in charge.
Right.
Kind of thing. And you wag the dog. As you're a command officer, you're making decisions. Don't let your company officers make those decisions. We're here to do a job. I learned a lot of that in the 1st Battalion. Very aggressive people down there. Wanting to do a job and keeping the reins on them, to not have your companies freelance, making assignments. For instance, I roll up on a scene one time as a battalion chief, and my car was just bum rushed with people, and firefighters, civilians, a guy from the electric company, all came to my windows on both sides, and my MDT goes down. I had no way of knowing who was assigned to what, but I made assignments from the windows to everyone. Everyone goes away from the command post. Everyone's given an assignment. There's 5 buildings burning down at the same time because it was all vinyl siding, kind of neighborhood, kind of townhouse situation, and made those assignments. And all of a sudden, it was like almost crickets. Where I realized then that every fire or fireground takes a breath at some point. That gave me time to get my tactical worksheet in order, make additional assignments, but making those decisions right then and there with each person, each assignment, each company, that gives you that command presence where we're running this, and having that tactical worksheet actually helps out a lot in your command presence, because where people are. You've made those assignments and you stay strong on that. Then I think that gives you a good, presence.
Right.
Not losing your cool. Don't get upset. Stay focused on the mission. That fire's got to go out.
Right.
And everything's going to get better.
Right. You mentioned Mark Davis in the beginning of this, and I've known Mark a long time, like you have. He was one of the battalion chiefs in the 1st Battalion. He worked a shift opposite of me. And I remember when I was working as the swing battalion chief in the 1-4 Battalion, we ran a house fire in right at where Company 16 and 18 came together, Glenmont and Four Corners. And even though I was the first due battalion chief, Mark was closer, got there first, and it was a really, when I say good house fire, it was a good house fire as far as firefighters are considered. We didn't have anybody trapped, but we still had to do our search. I pulled in, got into Mark's car, and I think within 3 or 4 minutes of me being there, the truck we were having a problem with the first due engine company getting their line charged. It would not go into pump gear. And a seasoned pump operator, he was doing everything he could. Ultimately, he ended up having his water supply, second due, pump through him so they could get the line charged. The rapid intervention company had their own hydrant. They had charged lines. The first due truck officer ended up calling a mayday. because the rescue squad crew came up missing people. The first person came up to him and said, "Hey, I can't find my officer." And he said, "Okay, where were you operating?" And then another guy comes up and says, "Hey, I can't find the person I was working with." Experienced truck officer called Mayday. The moment he called Mayday, our radios in the car went down. And it was, literally they just shut off. We don't know why to this day. And this fire was 8 or 9 years ago. We don't know what happened. Fortunate for us, I bought my own portable radio with me. Mark had his own portable radio. Plus we had portable radios in the car. I immediately turned the radios on. We got back to the fireground channels. He looked up at the house. We acknowledged the Mayday on the portable radio. He looked up at the house. I looked up at the house. I mean, this house was cranking. And very calmly, he looked at me and he says, "We're probably going to burn some firefighters on this one." Just calm like that. And then he came back and said, "Okay, command to rescue squad XYZ, can." Called him a couple times. The Mayday got resolved pretty quick. The RIC company we put into play right away. They had a charge hand line. Everything was good. They got about 85% of that fire knocked down. And I don't think Mark ever raised his voice above a casual conversation like we're having right now.
Right.
And to me, that spoke volumes, that calm during the worst chaos that you can think of, having that Mayday was it to me, I've carried that. I mean, talking about it now, it was 8 years ago, and I'm carrying that now. It's like, if you can be calm in that situation, because you have to be for the people that they're trying to go in and get, and still give commands and mitigate the Mayday, still trying to put the fire out. When our mobile radios went down, we don't know why, and being able to operate off portable radios and still command the units that were coming in. We're working off a couple of different channels. To me, spoke volumes that calm maintained all the time on no matter what call you run, from the alarm bells call, odor smoke in the building, to people trapped in a house. You have to keep that calm all the time, because that's going to dictate the way that fireground's going to go. If you're yelling and screaming out of control, then the people that are pulling hand lines and working inside, they're going to feel that it's out of control. And I think you're going to see that window of decision making kind of narrow down, and they're going to shut down.
Right.
Taking this all the way over to the other side, when we talk about micromanaging, if you're a chief officer that makes the decisions for everybody, your people are never going to learn how to make decisions. And I know you were never like that. I was never like that. And everybody that worked in the 1st Battalion and these busy battalions, they did not want to make those decisions for everybody. So I think that, like you'd said, just that command presence, that calm voice on the radio. We're 911. If we don't do it, who do we call? That whole cliche saying. So as we wrap up here, I just want to get your perspective on where you think we are now in the fire service. And in our role now, we're here to help the volunteers with whatever they want. Career people as well, because we even though we are an administrative volunteer service position, we're still operations, because we do go to calls and things like that. Where do you think we are in the fire service as a whole now, when it comes to the new people that are coming in, and how we're operating on the fireground and the incident commanders that we're bringing up, and where do you see we going in the future?
Well, I think as far as the volunteer service, it's still there. I mean, we still have the love for our community and firefighting, and we have a lot of people that are truly really good firefighters, volunteer career. And the career is, it's hard to have a force that's paid and the others not. But the volunteer service provides that force multiplier. Well, they'll never go away, because we need that force. If it's not for actual firefighting, it's for special events and other things. But there is that need. As new firefighters come up, and we bring in new firefighters with our high school cadet program, and you see these kids grow. Graduation's coming in the next couple of weeks. May 14th, we're going to have a graduation. But to see those kids come in August through May, and they get their classes under their belts, and you see them, they become firefighters. Now, we don't treat them as kids. We don't treat them as adults. We treat them as firefighters. and from the beginning to the end, it chokes you up to see them graduate because
Right.
you saw them. And I think once you get that drive, that firefighter, I don't know, it's in your blood kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about because you have it. But then you see that development, and with that, they carry that on, and pass it on to others. So it'll always live because we always have that drive. I know the day I walked into a firehouse or a small kid sees a fireman, or you see them in the grocery store, they're leaders. You see it. It's in their, the way they present themselves, and it's just a great group of people, and it'll never go away. But maybe it dwindle a little bit. We have our peaks and valleys in our companies, and over time we have a lot of people, then we have no people, and then it'll go back up. So maybe it'll come back around, but with society changes a little bit. Things cost a lot of money. People have to work, and it's causing some issues there. But other than that, I think we're still strong.
Good. Well, Shane, I appreciate you being on the show, and I know I've been trying to pin you down for a while. We're always busy with the things that we're doing, no matter what people think. But again, I appreciate your insight on the show. You've got a lot to offer to the people that are out there that listen to the show and understand that, you move forward, making your decisions. Again, they're not always going to be right. They're not always going to be the best, but it depends on how do you recover? How do you move forward? So again, thanks for being on the show, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Thanks for listening to this month's Side Alpha Leadership. You can reach us on the web at www.sidealphaleadership.com. We're on social media, on Instagram at Side Alpha Leadership, on Twitter at Leadership Side, and on Facebook for Side Alpha Leadership.